Hello everyone, welcome to the Age Group Triathlon podcast. My name is Simon Olney, I'm a professional triathlon coach, and in this week's episode I have a conversation with one of my clients, Sam. Now last year he contacted me looking for help completing his first Ironman, so we went from 0 to Ironman in a year. Not just any old Ironman, at IRONMAN Wales in Tenby, yes, one of the most feared courses on the circuit. We got him ready in 11 months' time. And I'm having a conversation with him today. It's quite a wide-ranging conversation. It's a very long conversation. This does actually break the record for my longest episode ever at over 2 hours. We cover a huge variety of topics. The main focus is around sort of his preparation for IRONMAN Wales, his day on the course. So this makes really valuable listening for anyone who's preparing for this event specifically or any Ironman at all. We also spend a fair bit of time, half an hour at the end, talking about his choice to to train on a vegan diet. Now, before anyone reaches for the skip episode button because they're worried that he's going to be really self-righteous and banging on about how cruel meat is, it's not that at all. Okay, he's simply having a frank conversation about the reason that he's chosen to eat a vegan diet, how he gets his protein, how he supplements different micronutrients he doesn't have, and how he just juggles it all, how he makes it all work in combination with Ironman training. Because of the fact of the matter is, as long as you do a vegan diet well, there is no reason that you cannot achieve great athletic feats with it. So, if you are interested in Ironman, if you are interested in training on a plant-based diet, this is going to be a really interesting episode for you, and I'm quite excited to share it with you. So, without any further ado, let's hop in. Hello Sam, good afternoon. How are you doing today?
Hiya, I'm good. Yeah, I'm doing well. How are you?
Excellent. Oh yes, yeah, no, nothing to complain about over here. Feels like spring has suddenly just appeared out of nowhere. You know, like
Oh,
normally have like a couple of nice days and a cold day, and and it kind of like it slowly appears, but it's like it just seems to have like turned it onto digits, which is quite nice. I'm not going to lie, but
yeah,
we're not.
this last week's been very nice. Yeah.
We're not here to chat about the weather. We're here to chat about Ironman Wales in Tenby. So, if you could give the listeners a little bit of a introduction into you, who you are, the sort of the kind of background that you have in sport, that'd be great.
Yeah, I can go ahead with that. So, to last Ironman, last September, I did Ironman Tenby. We got around it in just over 14 hours, I think it was. Um, and I trained for that for about a year coming into it. Sort of previous to Tenby itself, I've got a general ranging in fitness. I've always sort of been into sports and cycling, done a lot of cycling in my past. And I've also done a lot of sailing as well, which sounds very unsporty, but is actually fairly active.
I imagine there's more to it than meets
Uh,
the eye. I've never set foot on a sailboat, but you see them out there on the lakes now, around where I am, especially on on days where the conditions are a bit more changeable. You can tell that they're working out there.
Yeah, it's a fair bit of work, especially for sort of, going like for a long period of time. It's definitely a fair bit of work. I've done a lot of that, which gives me a good bit of base. And then I also, coming into the Ironman about a year before that, I did I never ran more than about 5K. And then my friend managed to convince me to sign up to ultra. It wasn't actually an ultra marathon. It came in just shy of a marathon. It's 23 miles, but at 1,200 feet of elevation.
Hmm.
So, and that was I had 8 weeks to train for that, coming from doing 5K, which I'm sure as a coach makes you want to wince a little bit. But
Well, as long as your leg didn't fall off, that's the main thing. It's like if people like tell me like in the past tense, oh, I did this, it wasn't a great idea, but I got round, then it's like okay, like not the way I would have chosen it, but sort of fair enough. Whereas if it's like if people talking like in the oh, I've signed up to this and I've got like 8 weeks to make this enormous jump, I'd be like, look, I can't help you. Like, like I can't. The chance of somebody getting injured are so high. And how was the preparation? How was the day itself?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for Ironman this or for
I know
the
for the
yeah,
little
the day itself, I was
run.
quite nervous because the longest run I'd done was 30 kilometers. And I've sort of
Oh,
never seen
long enough.
anything
Yeah,
beyond that,
yeah, yeah.
which is it's from all the research. I sort of did a lot of research and
Mm.
sort of self-trained for that run. And the they say don't really go much more than 30K
Yeah,
for long endurance running because the benefits
yeah.
like get really outweighed by the negatives and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So I'd never done more than 30K, and that was where like I was then like just like I don't know the beyond. So that was super
Yep.
nerve wracking. I'd only trained for 8 weeks,
Hmm.
so I sort of, and actually 2 of those weeks in the first week I managed to injure my foot. I think I got some sort of very low level of like plantar fasciitis.
Okay, right.
And I couldn't walk. So it was, coming into that day, I was super nervous.
Yeah.
But actually, it was quite a nice day. We had sunshine, which definitely made it better.
Hmm.
And I very quickly discovered that when you go on these sort of ultra trail runs, a lot of it's walking. All the uphill
Yes.
for sort of the beginner level, all the uphill was walking, and then it was a lot of bombing it down the hills, which was great fun.
Yep.
And then very sort of, but near the end of it, I managed to sort of get myself into a groove. But
Yep.
I put myself between the way I sort of looked at it was almost between like the fastest group and the next group behind me. So I was very much in just me and someone else,
Hmm.
and we were just running together and sort of trying to push ourselves along. So we would sort of, and that was really beneficial. I don't think I would go around if I didn't have this guy behind me, sort of going, right, okay, let's walk this bit, right, let's run this bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That was really beneficial.
yeah.
And yeah, I got around that despite being really worried.
I think when you look at sort of trail events like that, there is just it's a more friendly atmosphere. There's more sort of camaraderie. It's kind of like let's get through this together. Whereas like in
Yeah,
a road marathon, like you'd never have that kind of like encouragement. It'd be a case of like you are my rival and I'm just eyeing up the chance to pass you. But these kind of these ultra events sort of like trail more sort of laid back, like people are just trying to survive. And like trying to make sure that those around them get to the finish as well. It's a nice atmosphere.
I think that's exactly it. And actually, I think also the sort of quieter events, if I don't think I'd be able to pull that sort of, conversationalism out of like London Marathon.
No.
But if it was like a local marathon that's sort of hosted by the
Yeah.
community, you
Yep.
you maybe get a bit more camaraderie as well. So
Yeah.
I do think these sort of quieter events, you do normally get a bit more sort of banter between, I
Yeah.
guess, opponents or, other competitors. Yeah.
You've just given me a flashback actually, to something I'd forgotten about for years. You know how sometimes things just pop in your mind that you've forgotten about. Where I was in when I was living in Wimbledon, I was asked to be a like a sweeper for the marathon there. And it's 4 laps of 10K around Wimbledon Common plus a little extra bit. And I took my bike out and I just had a road bike. And with it being like a trail event, I was like, I'd honestly, I'd just rather run it. So it's like, okay, fine. So I was there and I sort of, it took me a bit of time to find the runner in last place because I turned up, sort of like 90 minutes before the cutoff or something like that. And I bumped into this guy at the back. And I got chatting to him, and he was there, and he was about to like to drop at the end of that lap, but I caught him, like a few hundred meters for the end. It's like, come on, we can go,
Let's
let's do
push
it,
it.
and
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
let's
yeah.
go. And basically, we just like very like it was either like very like jogging or walking um to get round. I don't think it was like a strict cut off as such, but I just walked the last lap with this guy.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
part of me was trying to like enthuse him, but part of me was just trying to like chat, like take his mind off the pain in his legs, like he was like woefully underprepared for this. But like chat to and then just chat to about like random stuff about myself, the business, what I was doing and that. And I remember because it was actually like completely dark by the time that we finished. And this guy came over the finish line and he was so emotional and like so thankful for me there. And like his family all came over. Like they had all like six of them came over and like gave me a big hug as a thank you
Yeah.
for getting him round and that. And it's kind of it is nice that like that spirit that you have of those events there. It does.
Well, I think it really backs onto the point of, like any of these events, one person may say it's not very much, but for someone else, it's quite a big
Hmm.
impact to actually
Yeah.
achieve. And it was, I think you get that sort of in a lot of these events, especially in like stuff that's televised, where you have these really competitive people,
Mm.
and their achievements are, oh, I've just done a 2 hour marathon or whatever.
Yeah.
But then, anyone in on that day who's achieving a marathon is still super successful, and all these
Yeah.
every other sort of event, showing up and actually training for showing up for it and actually doing the event, it puts you up there in a quite high achievement, I think. So
Like,
I think that really backs on.
absolutely. I mean, especially like ourselves, we live in this Ironman world, or even this triathlon world, okay? But sometimes I go to a park run, and there'll be somebody there pleased as punch because they've managed to walk the whole 5K for the first time, And it is like, and even like, even though they're just walking that 5K, that still makes them fitter than like a worryingly large percent of the population. Obviously, some population health issues, mobility issues, various bits like that. But um, yeah, but it is like this big sliding scale. It's easy, I think, for some people to get a very elitist mindset. Sort of people who like look down on anybody who goes over kind of like 15 hours for an Ironman, and
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
yeah, but the people who drag themselves across the line in 16 hours and 50 minutes, they were out there for longer than you. You know,
Yeah.
like they were like, it's, don't get me wrong, it's, the more time that you spend in training, the less time you are out on the race course, and there's all this discussion around it. But like, it's just nice to like step back and like celebrate people like achieving anything, let alone kind of gatekeeping or looking for an excuse to look down on people, which I think, some people, sort of enjoy in a way.
Yeah, I think it's also a big thing of, not looking at like not looking outwardly either as
Mm.
just yourself. One of the things that I have quite a lot is I go for a run. So like for example, today I've got I think an hour and a half run or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And if I were, and I throw that away. I say, oh yeah, just going for a run for an hour and a half. And I was chatting with some of my mates, and I was like, oh yeah, what did you do this weekend? Oh, I went for run for an hour and a half and ran, I don't know, 13, 14 kilometers.
Yeah,
And in my head, that's just a normal kind of weekend at the
yeah,
moment with this sort of training that we're in.
yeah.
But for them who sort of probably don't even run, don't do much sport,
Mm.
it's massive. I do think that, yeah, I have it all the time where I sort of hold myself and go, oh well, it's actually kind of rubbish, a
Yeah.
lot of the time. In fact, it happened at I was at a pool going swimming, and they were asked. We were just chatting, and there was a couple of guys who'd done an Ironman as well, and we sort of chatting about our times and things like that. And
Mm.
one of them asked how I got around, and I was like, "Yeah, I did it around 14." I was like, "I'm not too happy about it," sort of thing.
Yeah.
He was like, "Why?" And I think that's another case of
Mm.
it's a lot of the I think a lot of the internet out there makes you sort of, maybe looks down on a lot of the slower competitors, but also there's a lot of people out there who are so sort of tight, tunnel visioned on
Yeah.
getting really solid times, and that they're not looking and going, actually, a year ago I could never have done any of that, or 3 years ago, or how far your journey has taken
Hmm.
you. It really, I think it's really just a lot of the time I have to do it myself as well. Stop and
Yeah.
actually look at where I've come from and gone, okay, this is actually pretty cool how far
Because
I've come.
triathlon's a pretty big echo chamber. If you have a social media account and you find yourself following professional triathletes and, influencers and running brands and cycling brands, we see sort of world records. This professional won this, people going to the world championships, and we find ourselves, like feeling really small, really tiny in comparison to what it is that they're achieving. But it's that, and that's one of the things one of the reasons why kind of my philosophy as a coach is to try to keep people in the sport for as long as possible, rather than to completely like rinse somebody over like a year or 2 years, get them to Kona or their dream race, and then they never even want to look at a wetsuit again. It's because what it is that we're doing, like it's fantastic for like our mental health, our physical health, and that also like that sense of like pride and well-being. I'd much rather that somebody refers to themselves as being like, oh yeah, like I'm a triathlete, I do a few triathlons, rather than being that bloke at work who keeps on banging on about the Ironman he did 15 years ago, when he probably can't even, run 10K now, you know? Um, so yeah, balance and perspective and all that. But once you finish this trail event, what made you think an Ironman is the next logical step?
I think stupidity is probably it's probably the main one. I have a close friend who I do a lot of uh, stupid stuff with. I met him in uni, and we
Hmm.
sort of a lot of the time we egg each other on, we push each other to do
Okay.
these
Yeah.
things. He's the person I sail with. He's a very close friend,
Okay.
and I did this running event, and I told him sort of at the very start, I was like, I've just signed up to this, and he was like, why? And he was, we were sort of laughing at it. And as we got closer and closer, we were sort of, making jokes about me doing this event and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, after this event, I did the run. And actually, I was like, oh my God, I loved it. I really
Mm.
actually enjoyed doing the event. I'm not a fast runner, but I can run for a while.
Hmm.
I do enjoy these sort of endurance. I discovered I do enjoy this endurance stuff. And I sort of just came to him a couple of weekends later and I was like, I want to do an Ironman, and my partner has mentioned she's Welsh and has told it was like, if you do an Ironman, you've got to do it in Tenby first. It's like it's incredible. I didn't actually even know there was one in Wales. I'd just been
Mm.
scrolling and looking, and at first I was going to do the 70.3 in Weymouth, and I was like, actually no, you know what? I'm going to go full out and do the Ironman. And as I say, me and my friends sort of were like joking about it for ages, like, oh,
Mm.
yeah, go on, I'll do it if you do it. And it got closer and closer to the opening date. And then on the day it opened, he messaged me being, right, are we doing this then? And within 10 minutes of that message, we both signed up and entered. And we're both doing Ironmans again this year as well. So we're very, it was kind of one of those things that, yeah, it was sort of me and my friends sort of egging each other on, which seems to be quite a big thing in this
Hmm.
community from what I've seen. And then it was sort of it just stemmed from the fact that I did this random run, and I sort of thought, well, I trained for that in 8 weeks. If I
Yeah.
train properly, how how well could I do
Mm.
this Ironman? Do I actually have a chance, sort of thing like that? Because I was sort of for ages, it felt very unobtainable.
Yeah.
And then I did this sort of stint in 8 weeks. And I thought, actually, I can probably get into this endurance stuff. Yeah.
Mm. Well, what was your so what was your swimming like? Obviously you're saying that you're a reasonable cyclist and you managed to sort of survive this long trail run. What was your swimming like when you signed up to the Ironman?
Yeah, my swimming, I wouldn't say god awful. Being into sort of water-based sports, it
Mm.
wasn't terrible. I could swim. And it was by swimming, I was knowledgeable enough in the swimming environment that to know that my swimming would not get me 3.8 kilometers around a course. So that was a really big thing for me, was actually getting a lot of swimming in. I'd say it was probably the
Mm.
biggest worry for me was, can I get around the swim
Hmm.
course? So we actually put a lot of work into the swim across the sort of training stint, I think I worked for about 10, 11 months because it was a month after signing up to the Ironman. And so a large proportion of my training was actually denoted to the swim, just to make sure we get around it. And then the big one as well. I'm quite lucky that I have a couple of friends as well who are big into swimming and have swam at pretty high levels. So I managed to sort of swim a couple of times with them, and a few times they would sort of be like, well, maybe you're looking at this wrong and stuff like that, which was also really beneficial. But it was definitely my biggest worry was going in for the swim, sort of knowing that I haven't really swam that far previously, but sort of after a bit of training, it got me around.
And how did, sort of across all three disciplines, how did the training go? Obviously, it sort of started a good sort of like 11 months out from race day. How did you feel it progressing? What were your main challenges, fears, issues, or like even like not necessarily the negative things, but like the really big like breakthrough moments for you?
Yeah, I think the training itself went quite well, just based on the fact that I got from fitness level A to B. I wasn't unhealthy, but definitely had a lot more of a sort of gym physique. I did a lot more gymming and sort of stuff like that than an endurance-based athlete would normally have. So sort of doing almost a recomp into this sort of endurance-based sport was a fair bit of work. What I do think helped in that was I had 2 events before that sort of almost gave me baselines. So I did my first ever triathlon, which was a sprint. I did that sort of as into the training. And then a bit later on, I did my first ever middle distance, which was and they were really good, sort of having key points to sort of get to these points. And where my training was at, I could look at my fit, how well I did in the event and go, okay, maybe I need to work on this and this. And the middle distance was super useful. I think I did that a couple of months before 10B, and I got around the swim in 40 minutes, which was my biggest worry, was the swim. And I got around the swim for this middle distance in 40 minutes, which I did, put me actually quite far ahead of a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean,
in this
40
event.
minutes is a pretty like, yeah.
So it definitely helped. That sort of thing helped, having these sort of targets not being the main thing, but as a see where we're at, almost like a fitness test. And that really helped. And because in the race environment, I can sort of forget about everything. And I really, I'm not in training. I can sometimes get bored, or I'm not really enjoying this. I'll just get out the pool, can't be bothered anymore, or something like that. Whereas when if I'm in a competitive environment, I'm not dropping out kind of thing. I'm going for it. And that was really good. Getting through that middle distance sort of helped me know, actually, the Ironman a couple of months is really looking good. I had a couple of issues that I was like, maybe I need to work on. But
And when you say a couple of issues, if you could tell everybody what happened on the bike course.
Oh, yes. So on the bike course, it all went wrong, where I was riding really nicely. And this particular event I was doing was effectively, it had 600 meters of elevation, and it was a very steep hill. And I shot up this hill, and at the very top of the hill was an aid station. And mistake one was I hadn't looked at the course beforehand. And I went, oh, there's an aid station there. There'll be another one at some other point. I'm going to carry my momentum over this hill and just descend it really nicely.
Classic mistake.
And that was mistake one. There wasn't any other aid stations. So for me, that was just a nightmare. I couldn't get anything from the aid station. And the second part was, little did I know, I'd also dropped about half of my gels during the ride. So when I went into my back pocket and my bento box to get more gels and fuel, there was nothing there. And the last third of that race, last 30 kilometers, I bonked so hard, and I could feel my body just being like, you got to stop. This isn't going well for you. And I was like, my ride was just getting slower and slower. And then I got a headwind come into me as well. So it's just like mentally, I was like just breaking down because my nutrition had broken down. That was probably one of the biggest learning curves for me, was because I didn't carb load for the event. For that event, I think I had a pizza the night before. In fact, I think both of those
Outstanding.
triathlons, I had like a pizza the night before, which isn't the best. And then, yeah, so that was a really big issue. And then, yeah, I lost some of my gels, and I also was going into this event. I was going for 60 grams of carbs an hour, which sort of for running apparently is okay, and that I only sort of went for 60 because that's what I did on my long distance run the year before. So it really, I just thought that would work, and then yeah, as I say, my energy just left me, and it meant that on the run I was really having to fight back. You know, I got back off the bike, and I had some spare gels with me. I smashed some gels, had a chew, and then hit the run. And then I was at every aid station. I was stopping. They had bananas, Coke, and water, and I was literally in that order, like banana down straight away, Coke, and then water, and then I'd take another water and splash on my head, and then I'd go again, just because I needed to get. And it was every aid station I was having to do that because the bike fueling had just gone so badly, it didn't carry on. My run just was impacted so hard. I got to the end of the course, and I was so dehydrated that my sweat was like bubbly, which was it was really like just so badly done. That was, I think, one of the biggest learning curves actually, and one of the best things from this middle distance was that I did it and had this issue, and so it meant like, you know, I over the next few months of training I started doing 90 grams of carbs an hour, and I did a lot more research into carb loading before the event and things like that, which, you know, and that made night and day difference. I think that was really quite impactful actually.
So for anyone listening who is preparing for their first 70.3 or their first Ironman and is planning to just sort of wing their nutrition on the day, or just, you know, smash a couple of gels out and have a bottle of water on the bike, like, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
You need a plan. You need to research the bike course, look at the elevation, find out where the aid stations are, find out what it is the aid stations are going to be supplying you with. Because if it's a brand that you're unfamiliar with, then you might need to try that to see if it works for you ahead of race day. Have a plan, practice the plan. I mean, the nutrition like falling out of your pocket and like you dropping the nutrition, like that happens to the best of us. You know, you see like professionals who fumble a bottle, and you know that's like their nutrition strategy like goes up in smoke. You know, it happens to the best of us. But you know, if you just do everything you can to practice and to not like have that gung ho mindset of, oh, I'll just push through, because you cannot push through. Like,
No.
it is like impossible. It's like trying to give a JCB a bump start. You know, you just like your body. It just is impossible. You're pushing against something which is an immovable object, and your body will shut down on you, and you will have. I don't want to say necessarily embarrassing, because that's not. You know, it's probably sort of negative language to use, but you know, it will be a wake up call for you. You know, like all of your run training is going to be for nothing if you come off of that bike and you are complete. I mean, you know, thankfully you were able to bring yourself back from that. But once you to a point at least. But I find that when I bonk, that no matter what I do after that, like my body, I can never get back to where I should be. Like it's never a case of, oh, I'm bonking, but let me have like some carb mix and gel. Oh, it's like nothing ever happened. It is like, no, your body just goes into like shut down, like self-preservation mode, and you are just dragging your ass around the rest of the course.
That is exactly how I felt on the run. It didn't help that the run also had ascent. I chose this middle distance because of the ascent, because of the climbing, because you know, it was the best one I could find that sort of had similarities to Tembe, in that it had some punchy climbs on both the run and on the ride and things like that. And yeah, honestly, it was a 2 lap run, and the first lap I got around quite nicely. And the second lap, where you would normally be like, okay, you've gone round, you can set yourself into a distance. I basically had to lock myself out of my own head and just keep going. I think I had to walk the last hill.
Yeah.
That wasn't even that much of a hill. It was quite shallow hill, but I had to walk part of that. Things that normally fitness wise I could have ran that and things like that. So it was very unfortunate. Me getting that fueling off, but yeah, it absolutely, the biggest lesson I learned there was if you mess it up on the bike, there's no, lucky that was only a half. If I do that for another 2 laps on the run and survive myself on the bike, I don't think, for a full distance, I don't think it would have been a different story.
And that's, why I pushed you to do this warm-up race. I
Yeah,
don't think
yeah,
you needed. I don't think you needed much persuading at all. I think you were dead up for it when I suggested it.
yeah, yeah,
But it is important to make these mistakes like in an event into the run up to it. Especially if it's, if you're looking at like a fully branded Ironman event, like the costs involved with the race entry, the travel, the accommodation, everything that's involved. I'm not saying it's not worth it. I'm saying that you've invested a lot of money and a lot of time to get to this point. I'm just taking a weekend to spend 150 quid to go and do a sort of a local like middle distance race. There are loads of middle distance races around the UK. Just find one to go and do as a warm up, either to your big Ironman 70.3 or your full Ironman. Like it's an absolute no brainer if you ask me.
yeah, for sure. And also, I mean, end of the day, we're doing these triathlons for fun, I think. Somewhere down there, I think we enjoy it, right? So, it's a good fun weekend. Unfortunately, my middle distance was rained out, so it was a bit more disappointing. And I was lucky that my partner and my mum both decided to watch me do these silly things in the rain. But yeah, I definitely think that, as you say, the Ironman or your main event is such a big investment, not just in terms of money, but mentally as well, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got yourself like, this is the event I want to do well in. Go ahead and do a couple of smaller events just so you know what's going on. That for me, that was a big thing, was like, just so I can figure things out. As I say, coming into the Ironman, my first triathlon was like 4 or 5 months before that, and then I did the middle distance a couple of months after the sprint. And even the sprint, coming, just actually feeling that, going from swim to bike to run, it's actually a lot more than you realize. That there's actually quite a bit sort of physically into that, and the same for the middle distance, was going into the phases of swim, bike, run.
Mm. I mean,
You just getting exposure to it was really important.
for my money personally, the jump between the Olympic distance and the middle distance is the biggest jump of all of them, because you suddenly have to think about nutrition and pacing and things in a lot more detail. Not everybody, but a lot of people, when they take on an Olympic triathlon, they'll be like, okay, this will be like somewhere around like 2.5, 3 hours. And I can afford to work at a reasonable pace, not like an all-out pace, but like I can afford to be working in each discipline. Swim a decent 1500, like ride like moderately hard on the bike, and then see what you've got left in the legs for the 10K. And okay, that'll all be wrapped up in about 3 hours. And nutrition wise, you can literally get away with the age old technique of smashing a few gels. Like have two on the bike, have one on the run, you're fine. Whereas when you're looking at the middle distance and you're suddenly out there for 6 hours, people see the 1900 meter swim and they go, "Oh, I can swim 1900 meters like I swam 1500. There's very little distance." So they head out on the swim way too fast because they're thinking, "How fast can I swim 1900 meters?" Rather than I'm about to start what's likely going to be about 6 hours of continuous exercise and I need to pace myself as such. So yeah, like huge learning curve there. Some people take to it a lot, better than others. Obviously, you sort of had that. I know that we talked about the nutrition in the run up to it, and you sounded like you know what you were doing. Yeah, 60 grams an hour, I do this, sources from here. Okay, great. he's from his cycling and that, he's got it. Obviously, on the day itself, it didn't quite pan out, sort of as you'd expected, but it is, it's important, to learn those lessons in isolation. To work on getting that nutrition strategy down. But the nutrition on the day itself at Tenby, it went pretty well, didn't it, really?
Yeah, Tenby was a complete different story. It went, I would, not perfectly, but it went really well with the
Yeah.
nutrition. I carb loaded coming into it. I'd done loads of research into sort of how to carb load properly. And generally, the data was all sort of the same sort of thing. Of it was sort of you take your weight, you times it by 10, and you have that many grams of carbs a day 2 days before. So you have 2 days of high carbs, and then you taper off on the day before the event, still having a fair amount,
Yeah.
and then also specific carbs, just to keep your stomach going okay.
Yeah.
So I end up having 670 grams of carbs both days, because I'm about 67 kilos. I had that in white toast with Marmite on it. The amount of Marmite I ate during that weekend was, I mean, it was unbelievable.
Why
And
did you
I had it.
choose Marmite? I have to ask.
I just love it. Honestly, I just love Marmite. I don't think there's any nutritional
I was like,
benefit
is
in
there
that.
something to do with like the yeast extra? Like my nutritionist brain was
I think
trying to find something that no, you just love Marmite.
I think honestly, the only thing I was that maybe I could add, was you're not meant to have as much protein coming into it and stuff like that. It was probably maybe the only thing, but even then, I don't know. I just like Marmite, and so I had an entire
Do you
loaf
still
of
like
bread.
Marmite after
I
that?
still love it. I've got a couple of jars in the cupboard still. If
Couple of
Marmite ever want to
jars.
sponsor me, they're welcome to. Uh, but no, yeah, I had an entire loaf of bread over 2 days, and I had, I think, like two entire bags of pasta over those days. The one thing I would say was sourcing pasta and other carbs during 10B weekend was near impossible. Me and my friend got there on the Thursday, and on the Friday we went to the shops.
Mm.
And there's a big shop in Tenby, and it was like ransacked. There was like no crates of Coca-Cola, no bags of pasta, I think even the rice was running out. You could tell there was an endurance event on
Yeah.
that weekend. So we were lucky we brought a load with us. And we managed to get the last crate of Coca-Cola that we then ended up having to split between us, because no one out there was nowhere else, and we had to get that from the Tesco Express. So it was like they were like flogging it at a higher price and everything.
You weren't
So
scalping Coca-Cola in Tenby, were you?
yeah, it was crazy. I couldn't believe it. So that was like one of the big things. But yeah, the nutrition and the energy was so much better coming
Mm.
into that, just because, yeah, I did my research. I had all that carbs. And then coming into the actual event, I actually did. So the gels I use and the fluids I use is precision hydration.
Hmm.
And they have a website where they kind of give you a rough idea
Yep.
of what you should be doing. And that, to be fair, their numbers for me were a bit off. They're in the lower end. So, but I just tweaked them a little bit in
Yeah.
my own head. And sort of, so coming to the event, I was really like rigid on it. I woke up super early. I think I woke up at like 4 a.m.
Hmm.
Had smashed a bowl of porridge. I very rarely use my Fitness Pal, but this weekend I really used it quite a bit just to get the numbers pretty exact and on it.
Hmm.
And then, coming an hour before the swim, I sank an entire bottle of water with salt mix in it.
Yep.
20 minutes before the swim, I took a gel. Oh no, actually, I took a chew because I ran out of gels. That was the one thing that went slightly wrong. Was I'd put all my gels in my transition bags, going, I'll put a few more in just in case. So
Mm.
on the run, if I need them, I can get them.
Yeah.
And then got to take it, looking through my gels to try and find one for the swim, and found out I didn't have any apart from caffeine gels, which I didn't want to have before the swim because I wanted the kick to be from the caffeine to be after the swim.
Hmm.
So I had a chew. I'll come on to the caffeine after, actually. But Yeah, so I had a chew 20 minutes before the event, and going to that, I felt really good. The one thing I would say is I was holding in a wee for the entire swim.
What? Who holds in a wee when they're
Yeah,
swimming?
it
What
was
else are
all.
you supposed to do in your wetsuit?
I know, and the other thing as well, because of this on the swim, I think I was maybe fifth or sixth from the back into the water. I was one of the last
One
people
last
in the
people to enter the
water.
water, yeah.
So there, and in Tenby, there's like 2,700 people all queuing, and they let like I think 10 people in at a time, like in a gate kind of thing. So I was having to hold it in throughout this entire queue, and then when I got into the water, the plan I was like, oh, when I get in, I'll have a quick wee and then swim. But the adrenaline was just so there that I was like, I'm not gonna do that, and I just kept swimming. Um,
Have you not mastered the art of going while you're swimming?
No, I was trying. I genuinely I was trying, and it just nothing was going my way. And so I did the first lap. And I thought I'll do it when I get round and get back in because
Yeah.
it's an Australian exit at Tenby. And I got back in on the second lap, and it just it still wasn't. It wasn't working for me. Nothing. That was just not going my way. So I thought, you know what? No, I'm just going to get round, and
Yeah.
I know there are there's got to be cubicles in transition. I'll just go there.
Yeah.
And then sort of go around, did twice, got stung by 4 jellyfish, and then got to the transition, and I couldn't find the toilets. And I asked one of the attendees, was like, one of the assistants, like, where's the toilets? And he sort of moved a metal gate and was like, oh, there's one there. So I ran out to do that one, came back, and in the time I'd come back, the attendees had swapped around, and the guy was like, "You're not meant to be back there." And I thought I was almost going to get disqualified because I got told to go to the wrong place. So that was rather nerve-wracking. It turns out that if you just leave the transition tent towards your bikes, there's a whole queue of porta potties that I didn't see. But yeah, but generally that preloading for the event went really well. When I got on the bike, I felt full of energy. And the one thing, I certainly come back to the reason why I was avoiding the caffeine was I decided to not have any caffeine for a week coming into the event. They actually advise for the best effects to take 2 weeks off. But I forgot about it in the first week. So it all went wrong.
It's a marginal one, that one. I wouldn't
Yeah.
stress. Anybody listening, don't stress out too much about that. It's
But I think that week not having caffeine, first of all, showed off a reliance that I have on caffeine because my girlfriend kept making jokes about how you could see that, the caffeine, made me a bit more stroppy. But also just generally I was more tired and things like that for the first few days. So definitely coming off the caffeine for a week. When I had that first caffeine gel on the bike, it hit me a lot more than I think it would if I hadn't stopped drinking coffee, the week before.
Yeah.
That may have been placebo, but that was definitely something I thought was really, really impactful. But yeah, sort of with the general start went really well. And actually the rest of the ride, I can go into that now if
So if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, I'm signed up to Wales, or I'm thinking of signing up to Wales next year, if you could just sort of share insights on sort of the bike course, like notable areas of the bike course, like how you broke it down in your mind. Just, the kind of things you'd have wanted to hear, yourself in the run up to it.
So the one thing I did do on the bike course, which, as I say, I learned from my mistake last time, was I watched a YouTube video of a guy who did a recce of Tenby, and he did the swim, he did the ride, and he did the run, and he gave a few general tips on it all. And they're all over YouTube. Really would advise watching any of them really, because it's stuff like for the swim, they give really solid sighting points. Because the swim can get quite choppy, and even if it's a flat day, when you get out on the back leg of the swim, it gets really choppy. So having a sighting point on land really helped. And he did it anyway. So on the bike, he sort of identified all the really punchy hills, and sort of identified some really good points. Which when I got onto the bike, really helped me to sort of figure out where I was actually on the course. So if you can either do a bike recce yourself, I mean, that's the best option, or go on YouTube and watch a few. They're really useful. And it was things like the first loop. I sort of I found myself actually going, I need to slow down a bit here, because one of the things that was basically said quite often was, if you find yourself flying on here, you may struggle later on. So just make sure you sit into your plan. And I think I slowed down a little too much, to be fair to myself. But I think generally the consensus of, remember that it's only the first bit, and the second big loops are much worse than the first loop that you do. So I slowed myself down a bit, which I think actually I didn't need to slow myself down as much as I did. But on the course, on that first loop, it's really nice, actually. It's really pretty ride. There's I think there's one, if I remember correctly, sort of one or two punchy hills. There's one hill as you come out towards Angle. You come down, and it's along the sand dunes, or along a road next to sand dunes. If the prevailing wind, you get sand blowing across onto the road. So you've got to be really careful on that, I found. It did really change the dynamic of the road. And also you get some vicious crosswinds. So I had some quite deep set wheels on. And with it, you will go faster with some deep set wheels, but you've got to have the bravery, the confidence to hold it almost, because there's some violent crosswinds coming along, and with some deep set wheels, they sometimes catch. So that was one bit that was quite sort of maybe grip a bit tighter. And then
how much training did you do on those wheels?
On those wheels, not so much. But I'd done a fair bit of work descending, and sort of, as I said, I've been on bikes for quite a few years now. So on those wheels, I hadn't done so much. So I did notice it. I'd sort of noticed that the catch that you get with the wind on those crosswinds. But I was lucky enough that I've had quite a few years on the bike, so my handling's pretty good. And I was just on a road bike. I wasn't on a TT bike. I think it may have been a different story if I was on a TT bike, because you have just that slightly less purchase on the handlebars and things like that. But yeah, no, I hadn't had much training on those deep set wheels, and you could feel the crosswind. But straight after this sort of sand dune bit, there's quite a punchy hill that definitely sort of caught a lot of people by surprise. There's a few, really having to fight slowly. I was having a ball, so I sort of shot up that one. I was having just really good fun actually on this ride. I felt really good after the swim, so I felt really high energy, and the environment at Tenby really keeps your energy high. That was something that was incredible. And then when you come back around, you come into some really nice descents. There's a couple of roads that are a bit nasty on that first loop. On that first bit, you're quite close in, kind of dirty, potholey. So you have to be a bit careful, but they're signposted. The Ironman guys go out and say, care here. There's gravel on the road and things like that. So even if you don't get to see a video on it, at least there's warnings and things like that there. But a video really did help. And then you sort of come in and you come back against yourself and into the sort of second big part, which is two loops going from sort of Tenby up and then down again.
So it's because on the first lap, it's that one little bit out towards the west, towards Angle, wasn't it? And then you come back onto the main loop of the bike course.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You do two sort of big loops from sort of Tenby up and then back down. And that's where some real nasty climbs come in. I think there's a lot of waiting on Saundersfoot and Wiseman's Bridge. Saundersfoot being also known as Heartbreak Hill. And I think they are pretty powerful climbs, but I think the biggest one for me was the climb just coming out as you come out of the second loop is all the way up into a small town. And it's a long climb with some really punchy hits on it. I think there's not enough sort of weighting put on that part. But when you get on that, you then have quite a nice sort of undulating set down towards into Wiseman's Bridge. which that's a real challenging climb as well.
Mm.
I think on my first lap, when I got to that, there were people getting off the bike and walking their bike up the hill because it was
Wow.
so heavy.
And by the time you get to Wiseman's for the first time, you've got to be like 110 kilometers into the ride.
Uh, yeah, it's got to be something like that. I'm trying to think when the markers were. Those big loops are the bigger loops. I think each of
Mm.
them, I think it's 60, 60, 40 is the way it is. So
Okay.
maybe just before the 100K mark,
Yeah.
if you hit Wiseman's, around that time, you're right.
Yeah.
But yes, so your legs are, and you've done some pretty heavy climbs after that. So your legs do feel it. And it is steep. I think it's 16% or something like that.
Oof.
It's really steep.
Yeah.
And the descent is even harder. And again, not enough weighting on this descent. The video, warned me about it a fair bit. And you go on Strava, the Strava segment of this descent is called "Don't Hit the Wall" or something. And the reason why is because it's set hairpin turns with some
Yeah.
big walls in front of you. So if you mess up the turn, you're hitting a wall.
It's a great deterrent, that.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, people were going slow down this hill, and I don't blame them. It was a real challenging hill.
Mm.
And then you come into Saundersfoot, and that was awesome. I think that was it was a pretty tricky hill. I had ridden it a couple of days before because I wanted to get an idea of what it was like. And I kind of, when I hit Saundersfoot on the day, was like, oh, this is nothing like what I did 2 days ago, because and again, I don't want to spoil it for everyone, but there's crowds all alongside of you, and they're all yelling at you and cheering you on and smacking you on the back, and you just ride up this steep hill, and it is steep, but because there's so much energy around you, you don't really feel it as much. So I think that they were the big ones, but I think a lot of weighting is put on Saundersfoot and Wiseman's Bridge, and I actually think that Wiseman Bridge is probably the worst, but it's so short, and there's actually a climb before that is even worse.
Yeah.
And it's that coming out of Tenby.
So definitely look at the bike course, ahead of it. If you can, ride that course on your turbo trainer, or like using or anything like that to try and like simulate it. It's definitely a good way to go about it. I mean, I remember, although that being said, I remember riding the bike course of Ironman UK when I did it, and I did one lap on my turbo, and I think I was doing some and it was like a brutal bike course that year. I think I was actually like doing some work actually on my laptop while I was riding it. I remember coming off and thinking, "Oh, it's not that bad, that." But like it actually, like being out there outdoors, it is a different kettle of fish. When you are having to sort of, I mean, on the turbo, your cadence can drop lower than it can when you're outside. Like when
Yeah.
you're outside, you have to like get out the saddle, keep yourself moving, pull yourself up this steep hill. Whereas on the turbo, you can probably like pedal around at like 45 RPM cadence in your smallest gear and be like, oh, like you don't feel it in quite the same way.
You can go
So
a lot slower in a turbo as well. I think
yeah,
that's the big one. If you're going in ergo mode or whatever, and you're going, oh, well, I only do 130 watts, but you're going at 2 kilometers an hour, you can't stay balanced on a
yeah, yeah,
road bike at that sort of
yes,
speed. So I think that's the other one as well.
yeah,
And there's companies now that will take you out for a bike recce to sort of Tenby and that sort of thing. And again, I think watching videos on YouTube really, really sort of drummed into my head. I did it the night before, and I went, okay, yeah. And the one thing as well that you get given in your bag is you get given a sticker that you can put on your bike.
yeah.
I did, and I'm regretting it to this day because it's made my frame all sticky. Despite trying to I cleaned it about twice now, and it's still not coming off. So
Have you got
if
like
you can,
used like what have you used to try and get it off?
like muck off, just sort of general bike cleaning stuff.
Have a go with some again. I don't know whether like white spirit or something would be like safe
Yeah,
with the, but obviously
I'm gonna look at
do
that.
some reading. But yeah, you might have to get
Yeah,
something a bit kind of sort of heavier hitting out, but
yeah.
it should come off.
Yeah, the suggestion I've seen is people, what they do is they actually put electric tape down first, then put
Ah,
stickers down, and then what you just take the
yeah,
electric tape off, and electric tape off to a lot less down. But on that sticker has it has sort of at different kilometer points the aid stations, which, to be honest, I where it was on my frame, it was because I had my bento box and then it, and for me to look down that much was just uncomfortable. I kind of forgot about it. And I also was doing the ride with a watch. I didn't have a cycle computer on the time.
Yeah.
So distance markers were kind of not really a thing in my head because I wasn't really looking at my watch. And you only get the course every 10K kind of thing. So if you do have a speedo or you actually are looking at your watch and distancing, that sticker they had it in the bag that came with the Ironman bag that comes with your hat and stuff. They have the sticker that you can put on, and even if not, you can at least look at it and go, okay, at these points there's aid stations, and there were a lot of aid stations, to be fair. So
you said with your hat and stuff.
Did I say hat?
What I must have misheard you. What did you say?
I can't even remember what I said now. What was where was I at when I was
You were talking about things that were in the bag.
Oh, your swimming hat. Yes,
Oh,
sorry.
that's swim hat. So
Yeah,
I was thinking that are they giving away like Ironman branded bucket hats?
No, I wish. No, sadly, you have to buy all of them still. You get if it's your first Ironman, you get 2. You get the actual like pink one for me, which basically is just the Ironman hat that everyone's wearing. And if it's your first one, you get a second one, which says that you will become an Ironman. Because if it's your first Ironman, then actually it's even better. They're super like, it's on your bib and things like that. So they know that if it's your first Ironman, and then you almost get the crowd in being more amped up because it's your first time and things like that.
Yeah.
And there must be something on your racing chip as well, because whenever you go past, they've got like effectively DJs all over the course. Whenever you go past them, I think it comes up on your thing, and they then sort of cheer you on. You get so much noise around you just cheering you on. But that's when you get the bag.
I just got a wristband that said "Become One."
I
don't know what happened to that.
Yeah, I've got my wristband on my fridge. I managed to take it off and without damaging it, so it's hanging up on my fridge at the moment.
And then, it sounds. I mean, how did you feel by the end of the bike?
I felt really strong, actually. That I definitely felt strong, and I think I could have got it faster. I did, I think we spoke about this actually in my debrief, but one of the things I did watch on the video was him going, if you're overtaking loads of people, chances are you may be going a little too fast. And I think that's probably really likely at like the front packing, but because I started,
so far back,
where I was in grouping was probably not the fastest people. So my bike, I was worried about overtaking people, and then I was worried about slipstreaming and things like that. So it was like I was like hanging back really far and then trying to go for overtakes. And because I was near the back, there was a lot less I guess sort of care for a lot of things. So like I had a couple of times where people would stick on the right hand side, so overtaking was a bit tricky and things like that. So I think after the bike I actually felt pretty strong, but I think it's down to a couple of things. One, my fueling was really solid, and you should feel good after the bike because you do still have to run a marathon. If you don't feel good
after the bike, you're in trouble.
But I think I maybe felt a bit too strong coming off the bike. But yeah, I then sort of came in, found my bay, put all my stuff away, and then switched out into my running stuff and headed out, which was then, it's a whole different battle almost.
Especially that, because there's a hill that you hit like pretty much straight out of transition, isn't there?
Yes. So it's sort of almost split into 2 parts, I think. The marathon. It's 4 laps, like most Ironmans are, 4 10K laps, or 10 and a bit K laps. And it's sort of, each lap is 2 parts. It's the hill element where you go up and down a hill, and then the town element, which is undulating because you're running through town and you're sort of going through all these loops. And when you come out of transition, you go straight onto the hill. And it's flat for a moment and then it's just up, and it was quite a shock. And I went into it basically my plan being I'm going to walk most of the hill, hit the really steep parts. I'm just going to walk it,
Yeah.
and then descend on the run, and then run through town, and then do that, and it
Yeah.
worked. But it was quite demoralizing, literally doing your coming out first lap and you're already walking. It was that was quite a mental thing to sort of not think about. And also at that point, like you committed almost the whole day at this point. You've done an hour and a half swim. I did the bike in I think 7 hours, so something like that. So you've been out for about 8 hours at this point.
Yeah.
And for some reason I had in my head as well doing this, that's like, oh my God, I'm not going to get around it in time. And so I don't know how I managed to tell myself that I wasn't going to be able to do this marathon in like 12 hours or something. I think I had left over.
This is something that like a lot of people, including myself, struggle with, is that you cannot trust your brain on race day. When it comes to like decisions that you make in transition, like you see people fly through transition and not put on an extra layer or gloves despite the fact it's freezing. Or you see people who like they let the self, like in your case, like let the self-doubt gnaw at their mind, and you're trying to do like mental arithmetic
Yeah.
whilst your body and brain are exhausted.
Yeah.
And
That is it.
I've had it before when I was, when I've been doing events, I've been trying to like calculate, and I run the calculation like 4 times in my head, and I get a different answer every time.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
get up with one answer, and you really panic. You're like, "Oh my God, I'm not going to make it," or I'm not going to get my PB. And then you do the maths again. Think, oh no, no, that's not right. Surely not. And you can just drive yourself nuts. And the kind of it's really hard not to think that, especially when it's like quite lonely out there
Yeah.
at times. you know, Once you're into the back end of the run and things are really starting to get rough, but to just try to like put that like and just go, look, let me focus on stringing together the best run that I can, rather than worrying about like how much time it is that I have left.
Yeah. I
Just
think that was it.
yeah.
I think that is exactly it. Coming in, just trying to ignore the mental, and
Mm,
that was one thing I definitely did do near the end. I had in about lap two. I think I
yeah,
put my shoes on too tight or something like that,
yeah,
and my feet were in the top of my right foot was in like stabbing pain and things like that. I was just trying to ignore these sort of things because
mm,
I knew what it was, but there was nothing I could do about it. And I knew it wasn't going to stop me from doing the event. And I knew it
mm.
wasn't like it was a muscular pain. It was just that I'd done my shoe too tight and the inflammation was there and things like that. So I ended up,
Did you loosen your shoe?
I tried, but it
Okay.
was like down the way, and I almost sort of didn't want to stop.
Okay.
I think was a big thing.
Yeah.
So I ended up like just readjusting my shoe, and it helped a bit.
Gotcha. Right.
But yeah, I think but I had in my head a plan, and I think the big thing to stop the mental mindset coming in is stick to the plan. And I think when I set my plan, it was I didn't have pacing targets. I had almost not vibes, but
Mm,
I had heart rate targets, and I had how am I feeling targets. So if my heart rate was spiking, I knew that I needed to maybe dial it back for a bit. If I was walking up the hill and I felt okay, I could add a bit more oomph to it and things like that,
yeah.
and that worked really well. So I think the biggest way to get around the mental is just follow your plan, set a plan, and then follow it.
Yeah.
Was almost the
And what was
thing.
the plan that you had going into the run?
Yeah, it was pretty a basic plan of hit the run. It was walk the aid stations. Walk the aid stations, and then walk the hill. There's a big hill. Walk most of it. There were a few parts where it flattens out or
Hmm.
sort of gets all right. So I ran them, and then it's run down the hill and then run the town, and I think the way it works really well is the town is undulating and you can feel the hills, but it doesn't really matter because there's so much crowd around you. Again,
Yeah.
in the town, it was just noise and it was screaming, and you just don't know it's all around you, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
So running the town was fine. And then as you kind of come out into the hill, it gets dark because, you know, it's later in the year and things like that.
Yeah.
You're very much on your own on maybe the last two laps, you know. And I was, you know, there were people there who were maybe on their first lap or something like that when I was on my third, and I was looking at them and I was like, wow, I'm really like I'm happy I'm not there, because running at that sort of time, you know, where it was completely dark, you know, it was a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
But yeah, so walk up the hill, run the downs and things like that. And then the other one as well is I had and on both the run and the bike, I had the aid bag that you can also pack, and it's irrelevant to your transition bags. It's out on the course.
Yeah.
And it's effectively, you put a load of stuff in there. It gets thrown away at the end of the event, so don't put anything like a massage gun or anything important in there. But you know, if you can, it's there if you need it. And I packed, and again, I packed, I think 4 Marmite sandwiches, and a can of Coke and some paracetamol. And on lap 3, you know, I already knew this was going to happen, so it was pretty good. But basically, I sort of broke the laps down. Lap 1 was my exploration phase. It was look around, just get into the vibe. Lap 2 was lock in a pace and feel it good, and that worked really well. Lap 3, I already knew it was going to be terrible. It was like fight your demons and just move through. And then lap 4, I think I called it my victory lap or something like that. You know, lap 4, it's 10K. You know, you can do that in less than an hour. I had that in my head. You know, 10K is less than an hour. You know, it's 2 5Ks if you think about it, kind of thing. And lap 3, when it hit me hard. You know, it was I hit lap 3 and I was like, oh my god, I'm only halfway, right? And I'd taken my sunnies off because I couldn't see anything on lap 2 because it was so dark, and I went, actually, you know what, I don't want to see anything. So I put my sunnies back on, and I could see silhouettes of runners in front of me, and I could just about see the course markings, so I knew about where I was, and I just sort of ran based on my body. And when I got to the special needs bag for lap 3, I took a paracetamol because my foot was hurting. I smashed a can of Coke, and I that was a mistake because I swigged. I had the whole thing, and I was almost sick actually, because it was, I think, maybe just fizz and sugar. It probably didn't help. And then I took myself a Marmite sandwich for me to, as I ran around the town, I could munch on the Marmite sandwich.
There's something painfully British about running around an Ironman marathon course with a Marmite sandwich.
Yeah, I think my girlfriend was sending updates to my family whilst she had my phone and was sending videos. And I think one of the videos she sent was, and she was putting it on my Instagram and stuff like that for everyone. I had so many people were following me almost. It was actually quite nice. It almost made me quite emotional.
I kept getting tagged on Instagram throughout the day.
Yeah, it made me quite emotional actually, just because so many people were like watching and all that sort of stuff. But my girlfriend was filming everything as I went around, and one of the ones was me coming around the corner, starting my final lap, just finishing the Marmite sandwich, you know, scoffing it down. It didn't look pretty, you know, munch it, because I was like, I'm going to do the 4th lap and it's going to be great. You know, I didn't want any Marmite sandwiches in my way. You know, hit that 4th lap and it felt so good. But they were the big things, was walk up the hill, run down it, run the town, and I walked the aid stations actually. But the aid stations for Ironman for the run, there's not there's no gels or anything like that, if I remember correctly. I don't think there were any gels. There were electrolytes, and there were and they were crisp.
Could be that some athletes have got like a habit of, they're like, well, I've paid this much for an Ironman, and they'll grab like a dozen gels from the aid station, like stuff them down their tri-suit and be like, I'm taking these home. Which means that then you have people who are at the back of the field who are like, where are the gels?
Yeah, I think if you on the website it says what they have, and they were pretty religious on that. So but different ones, the aid stations are different things at the run. So some had crisps and some didn't, and things like that. But yeah, generally they were, you know, pretty good aid stations. But that was kind of it. And then I finished it, got through, I took my time on that red carpet because, you know, I saw the time. I knew that it wasn't like close to an hour or, you know,
Yeah,
close
yeah,
to like one of the hour marks. So, you know, that's fine. And I hit the red carpet. Um, I'd scouted out the bell for before the day before, so I knew where the bell was.
yeah,
Again, for those I guess listening who don't know what I'm talking about, if it's your first Ironman, they have a bell out for you to ring. So I stopped. I rang that. I thought I rang that for like half an hour. The video of me ringing it is maybe a second, and then I ran down, and I was like screaming and shouting, and
yeah,
everyone's around you. It was just awesome. And then
yeah,
you go into you finish. You get a free towel, which is now it makes a cameo at all my swims. When you finish, you go into the like sort of aid station,
yeah,
like final tent, like the competitors tent, where you've got a bag that you've pre-dropped off already, which is all your like
yeah,
your day clothes. So I had some trackies and a shirt and a hoodie that I could put on, and then you get your finisher shirt, and they've actually got a load of food prepped for you and stuff like that. That's just fat, greasy, carby, which I did give a miss on, unfortunately. Um, but it generally, yeah. And I was just chatting with people, and you got some freebies. I think I got like a free Morten gel and some other stuff like that. And
yeah,
they had like the athlete brew or something, which is like their I think zero alcohol beer
yeah,
that's
yeah.
sponsored and stuff like that. And you get all that for free. And that was, you know, it was pretty nice because you're sat there, you're getting ready, and like you're surrounded by everyone else who's just completed an Ironman.
I remember, you know, finished my first, went in there, got my finisher's t-shirt, got a massage. They had some pizzas, and some friends of mine were there to support me. And I came out, and they're like, "What the hell happened?" I was like, "Oh, what do you mean that you were in that tent for an hour?" What?
Yeah, I basically had warned my family. I was like, by the way, there's a tent at the end for competitors. I won't have my phone because obviously my partner had it on her. So you know, just don't wait for me. Because I've got a Garmin watch. I've got to find there's like a find my phone feature,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I could just do that, and it was all fine. But yeah, literally, I mean, time. I think I was probably in there for half hour, 40 minutes,
yeah.
and then I don't know where the time went. I was just chatting with people, and you know, as you probably know, I could talk the ear off a brick wall. So you know, there's a lot of people who I decided to chat
But
to.
you made my life very easy there, and haven't had to ask you many questions.
Yeah.
Um, so what I mean, you know, just to kind of, you know, fluff your ego up a little bit more. Like, what is it like crossing that finish line? Like, what did it mean to you at the time, or what does it mean to you now? You know, completing that event.
I mean, yeah, for me, I just incredible. I mean, for me, it was just I finished that line and I was just amazed that I actually did it. First of
Mm.
all, that was the biggest thing for me, and then and just how awesome it was, you know, that whole day, and I was really happy I got through it. And then I sort of I finished it, and I was like, I was then analyzing everything, and I don't advise people to do this. I was then going like, "Oh, I could have done this a bit faster," you know. Oh, I stopped here like a little bit. My transitions were a complete mess. I'm pretty sure I checked myself into a spa on my transitions, and like I think I took like half hour on my transitions or some stupid thing like that. So I did. I sort of went, oh, I could have done that faster. You know, I could have
Yeah.
done this faster. I could have broken sub 14 if I did this, that, and the other. So I
Coulda,
really
woulda, shoulda.
overanalyzing, but I was still like, I did well. You know, I was still
Mm.
really impressed with myself for doing well. And I got back, and my girlfriend was like, "Oh, check your phone. It's exploded with messages." And I had messages from like work colleagues and friends, all being like, "We watched you from the start." You know, they loads of them woke up early and were tracking me on the Ironman app,
Yeah, yeah.
and that was just incredible. And then yeah, and then the next day. Surprisingly, I actually felt okay. I was walking around town and things like that. Went for a big breakfast. You know, it was really good actually, because I was quite surprised I could do that. But yeah, no, like generally I was like, oh my god, I've done it, and then I sort of I there was a bit of analysis, but generally it was like, oh my god, I've done it. And then I think the next few weeks for me were really quite hard actually, because
Mm.
I sort of like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
And that was a big thing. And I was like Googling it and I was like, what have I done? Why am I like this? And everyone has it apparently, it's a big thing. And I was just like, well, what do I do now? And a lot of people were basically like, just take a breather. Don't do anything, don't do anything rash. And that's what I did. So I didn't do anything crazy. I sort of tried to hold myself back from signing up for anything stupid and things like that.
Yeah.
And then about a month later, I went, okay, you know what? I really did enjoy that. I want to do another. So I've signed up to another Ironman now. So I'm going to Nice this year. But yeah, no, there was about a month where I was like, that's probably the biggest, where I was like telling myself, I was like, that's the biggest thing I'm ever going to do in my life. And I'm, 20, I was 25, I've just turned 25 and I've done the biggest thing I'm ever going to do in my life. It's like, come on, what's the point now? And it's not the case. There was so much more, as I said, I was analyzing that I could do this better, faster. And so for me, it was just trying to reprioritize and go, actually, it's not the biggest thing. It's, the distance you've come from a year ago, that's what you should be looking at, not, I've got 70 years more of disappointment or whatever. It's, I've come this far in this short
Yeah.
amount of time.
Yeah.
Think how crazy I can go in the future.
Yeah.
Which is sort of what drove me to
That's really interesting. It's something that I think, a lot of people don't really sort of touch on those kind of like post Ironman blues. And people talk about the same like with the Olympics or like even after like a wedding or anything, it's amazing, and it's incredible. I would encourage absolutely everyone to take it on. But that it does leave something of kind of a void afterwards. I think it goes back to what I was saying at the start, wanting to create kind of a sense of, like sustainability with the training and what it is that somebody's doing, like, because I want to, the way that we trained for that Ironman was training for your first Ironman, doing what we could to get you round,
yeah
rather than like pushing you to your limit to the point where you're like fed up to the back teeth by like February and
yeah
being
yeah
like, I just want this to be over. And then you do the event and you're like, yeah, like I did it and I'm ready to move on with my life.
yeah
And you have to reframe these things in your mind. And of course, there's only so many times that you can reframe that. It's not like you can do, another sort of 60 Ironman events like every year until,
yeah
yeah,
yeah yeah
but it's keeping that kind of, that, just like that fuel for the fire, reminding yourself why you're there, how far you've come, looking at different ways to improve, different experiences to have. Even like for some people, like going to different Ironman events in different parts around the world. But I really, I don't want people to cross an Ironman finish line and think this is, like you say, that the idea like this is the greatest thing I'll ever achieve, and
yeah
then going, well, I'm never going to do that again, so why bother? And I think some people's brains are wired differently. I remember chatting to somebody at a running club during a session back when I was in London, and he said, after my Ironman, he said, well, I know I can swim 3.8 kilometers, ride 180 kilometers, and run 26.2 kilometers, 42.2 kilometers. So why would I go out for anything shorter than that? I
yeah
hope that he kind of like he worked through that and sort of and understood that. But it does like what it means to you when you sign up for your first one, when you're training for your first one, and that you do have to reframe that. You do have to sort of reflect and not just rely on this boundless kind of inspiration and motivation, enthusiasm that kind of got you to through the first one, and go, I need to like work out what it is that made me tick. What were the wonderful moments that I'm looking to recreate and use those as that kind of that fuel. So on the subject of that, if you have somebody who is around about at this point in their training, so March, and they've got an Ironman coming up this year, and it's, if for the sake of argument, they started training in January, and they've been training for 2 months now, and the kind of that initial like motivation, enthusiasm, buzz, all of that has worn off, and it is a case of like, okay, like another 2 hour ride this weekend. Oh, great, I'm doing another technique set at the pool. And what would your advice be to those people who find themselves in a little bit of a kind of a motivation rut, what would your
Yeah.
advice be? What would you have wanted to hear at that point? Because I remember you saying that for you that the zone two training was a bit of a hard sell to start with, but
Yeah.
that
So this was a big thing for me was, you know, the unfortunate factor is that zone two training is meant to be boring. It's not meant to be, but you're meant to almost feel bored, and because that basically means you're comfortable in a comfortable
mm,
pace. Um, I think the big things for me was there were a couple of things. There was one for me was that I kind of reframed my mindset. And this, it sounds really silly, but and it was brought on by a colleague who I used to chat with quite a bit, and I was like, oh, I have to go and do a run tonight, or oh, I have to cycle or something like that tonight. And the colleague was like, you're aware that you're doing this by choice. You're not, you don't have to, no
yeah,
one's gonna, put a gun to your head and be like, do it now,
mm.
unless your training's changed a little bit, but so and that then sort of made me think, yeah, you're right. I'm doing this because I enjoy it.
Mm.
So reframing my thought to, I get to go on my run. I
Yeah,
get
yeah,
to go on my bike today and stuff like that. That sounds really silly, but has helped.
mm.
The other one was I I tried to mix it up a little bit when I had these zone two sessions on the bike or something like that. For ages, I just stick my laptop on and watch, a film or something like that, and it gets really boring. And after a while, you've watched all of Netflix and every other streaming service out there, and you're like, okay, this is insane now. So I try to switch it up a little bit. I try to, actually watch the Swift guy or, listen to a podcast, listen to
Mm.
music, and that really helps. Is changing things up. It's like going to the gym and you don't do the same 5 exercises every time because it gets
Mm.
boring.
Yeah,
I used to, when I lifted at the gym a lot, would be sort of 10 weeks and then switch it up, do different
hmm,
exercises, because doing the same exercises every week in, week
yeah,
out, just it wasn't for me. So those were really big ones. And then also the fact that I had my sprint and then had my middle distance were also really good because it kept me on track, knowing that I was training for something. And I did find that actually coming into the sprint, there was I had a bit of a stoop, and then I hit the
yeah,
sprint and was okay, and I was sort of reactivated, and I was like, okay, I struggled here and here and here, so
yeah,
I do need to keep training.
yeah.
And then when I hit the middle distance, I had a couple of stoops as well, and it was like, okay, I did struggle here and here, so I need to keep training. And that really helps. It is so, I'm not saying pay for another Ironman or something like that, but having another event just to go to, even if it's like a local marathon, something like that really helped as well, to keep me sort of on track. Again, I was lucky because I had a friend who was doing it with me, he's doing the process with me, and so we were almost like competing against each other in
Mm.
training, being like, oh yeah, I ran 20K yesterday, and he's like, oh yeah, I did this, and that really helps as well. So I think, but I think the big one was reframing the mindset for me.
Mm.
Was massive. Going, I'm getting to do this was
Yeah,
far more important than going, oh, I need to go for a run or something like that.
yeah. So do you feel that at some point, again, maybe this was like getting towards like ahead of the middle distance or whatever, was there a sort of a mindset of sort of complacency that crept in at any point? We kind of thought, oh well, yeah, I can do it, so I can afford to skip this week's ride, or was
Yes.
there any of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I had that. And at the time as well, the bigger one was, I had that, and I was traveling quite a bit as well at the time.
Mm.
So what it meant I was doing a lot of the time was I traveling, having takeaways, all this stuff. So I was being unhealthy, and I
Mm.
also wasn't doing the training sessions. So, coming just after my middle distance, I had a phase where I was actually felt really not well, quite unhealthy,
Mm.
just because I was like, oh, I don't need to train this week. I can miss it, or this, that, and the other.
Is
And
that
then
because you'd finished the middle distance and you're like,
yeah,
that went
because I'd done
fine,
the
it
middle
went well.
distance. Well, it was almost actually with the sprint. It was like I finished the sprint and I was like, okay, I did pretty well. I had a puncture on it, which completely ruined my time, but generally I was happy with it. But with the middle distance, I actually think it was more of I finished it and I was like, oh my god, and I sort of locked myself in. I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. I
Okay.
really struggled on that middle distance. And then I almost put myself in a shell for a couple of weeks,
I
being like,
see.
oh, and during that time as well, my diet messed up and I wasn't really locking in on my training as much. And then I came back to it and I was like, oh my God, it was so hard to get back into the training just because
Mm.
my energy levels were just like smashed from not eating healthy
Yeah.
and also just from 2 weeks missed training. My
Mm.
body then suddenly being like, right, you got to run, you got to swim, you got to cycle again. It took ages to recover.
So on the sort of the subject, I mean, obviously, like I think nutrition would have been sort of one of the big reasons that like you say, eating lots of takeaways didn't feel so good. Wanted to move in sort of the second part of sort of the discussion, but because we had a call um sort of about a month ago, or was it the month before? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it was about a month ago.
And I remember you said to me, "Oh, and which like that doesn't you mentioned, oh, I have to do this because I'm vegan." And I remember like I had this moment of myself where I thought, I can't remember that I can't believe I forgot that he's vegan. I thought, well, it was 18 months ago that we had that first conversation, but
Yeah.
the reason that it had stuck in my mind, that it hadn't stuck in my mind, was that it doesn't really matter. Like, the fact that you're a vegan, I don't have to adapt your training. I don't have to go, oh, well, he won't be able to do super long rides, or he won't be able to lift heavy in the gym. There's nothing that I need to do in my job as a coach needs to, is going to be affected by the fact that he is vegan. Because really, like there with I mean, my belief at least is that with the proper approach, if you're willing to invest in sort of time, education, all of that comes with it, I believe that you can achieve everything that an omnivore or a vegetarian or anything like that can achieve, even if somebody's on a vegan diet.
Yeah, I mean, so I completely agree. Obviously, being an example of it. Yeah, I think for me, veganism, it just kind of works for me, right?
Mm,
And I'll preface everything I'm about to say with, obviously, you can obviously do all this as a meat eater, as an omnivore, whatever,
yeah.
because you absolutely can, and there's examples of it. And I always say this with my friends when we talk about my diet and things like that, because
Mm,
I never want to be like, never one of the guys who's like, you have to go vegan because it's so much better. You absolutely can gain muscle. You absolutely can, lose weight. You can absolutely be healthy on a normal diet. That's absolutely a fact of life, right? There's so many examples of it.
mm,
Yeah, but for me, the veganism really helped. I went vegan about 5 years ago now,
mm,
um, because I was in uni and I'd put on a load of weight. I felt really unhealthy,
mm,
and I'd watched a documentary called Game Changers,
mm-hmm,
which was just about different vegan athletes and
mm-hmm.
other athletes who went vegan for different events and things like that. And then sort of talking about the health benefits and all this sort of stuff. And I thought, you know what, why not? I'll give it a try for a month and see how it
Mm.
goes. I went cold turkey vegan for a month after, and I used to eat a lot of meat, and it's quite,
Really?
it was almost a matter of self control. Was kind of the
Hmm.
whole reason for it. And so I went vegan for a month, and then I've never gone back. And
Mm.
that was in 2020. It was the height of COVID, 2020 of September.
Yeah.
Because I'd just gone to, I basically was like, I'm going to move to uni and I'm going to go vegan for my second year of
Mm.
uni.
So
Uh,
how did
yeah,
you sort of, what was it that after the first, what was it that after the first month made you think, like, I don't miss like eating meat? It's of no real, like, I don't feel it calling to me. What was kind of, what was your desire, what was the decision that you made to go, yeah, I'm just going to stay with this? What were the influential
it
factors?
was it was it was pretty much what you've just said there.
Mm.
Is I wasn't like, I wasn't like, oh, I really need a kebab after my night out sort of thing, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I was lucky to be in a very small town that was quite a progressive uni town called Aberystwyth in West
Yep.
Wales. That's where I went to uni, and it was incredible. But I was very lucky that that was the uni I went to, because there was every restaurant, every pub pretty much had a vegan option. So I was, 10 years before that, it would probably been a lot more difficult,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
it was so much less obtainable. But
Mm.
nowadays it's super easy. And I was really lucky that there was just a lot of vegan options out there. So it wasn't really that I had to find anything more tricky, which was really
Mm.
good. And yeah, I basically went the month. I went, actually, I don't miss it. I felt healthier. It could well have been placebo, but I felt a bit cleaner.
Mm.
And I was still maintaining at the gym. Because the main thing is I switched my diet over, but I was still making sure I was still using my fitness pal to hit my macros, and I was weighing all my food. And I was really making sure to still,
Yeah.
my mantra to it, and it still is to this day, is if I start getting unhealthy, and if I go and get a blood test or something, and a doctor tells me that this isn't working for you and things like that, then I'll change back.
Yeah.
So at the moment it hasn't caused a problem, and it didn't hasn't for the last sort of 5.5 years.
Yeah.
I do have to maybe pay a bit more attention to my macros and things like that to make sure I'm not, I'm having the correct forms of protein, because I think the biggest issue is people think, oh, I'll have kidney beans and chickpeas and stuff like that as a really high, because they're, being branded as a high protein source. And actually they are okay, but they're a carb source. And, so stuff like that is really important, is actually knowing what you're eating, do your research. And that's why, so a lot of my meals will be constructed of sort of tofu or tempeh or something like that. And then veg, which will include chickpeas and stuff like that. And then a primary carb source, rice, pasta, something like that. So, which is just the same as sort of any other meal, right? But instead of chicken and rice, it's tofu and rice or something like that.
Yeah.
But it takes a bit of research to do that. So I think that's one of the big ones. And the other one for me is that sometimes maybe a hurdle is when I am, if I'm doing a session or something around now, I don't want to be going through expensive gels. So I have I have Optimum Nutrition gels, which I just really like. I think they're really good. Most gels are vegan, so I don't need to really go too crazy on that. But I don't want to be spending, £100 on gels, because they are expensive.
They are. They are.
So what I do is you have sweets, right? That's the easier way of getting sugar. And that's where you do have to be a bit more careful. There's a lot of sweets out there that aren't actually, that aren't vegan, because they have gelatin in and stuff like that. So those are ones that you have to be a bit more careful with. But the internet's out there; it's really easy, and we get a Tesco delivery, and you just say, I order my bags of sweets in bulk. I know which ones are vegan, so I just order 10 of them, and I'm sorted. So it just requires a bit more research.
Yeah. A couple of questions at that point. Firstly, while we're on the subject of sweets, what sweets have you found that you can recommend, for somebody out there who might be thinking about going vegan, or who's newly vegan, what can you recommend, in the way of, brands or flavors, or that, what are your go-tos?
Yeah, so the easy one that are cheap is, because as if there are any vegan listeners are there, and a lot of people who aren't vegan will probably, it's one of the big arguments for not being vegan is expense. As soon as you put something on that's vegan, super expensive. So for me, the easiest ones, there's some Haribos are vegan, but they're not marketed as vegan, so they're the best to choose,
You
because
just have to look through the ingredients.
yeah, exactly that. So they're not like, they don't have vegan sweets written on it. They'll have sometimes the stamp on it that says vegan. Sometimes they'll have the veggie stamp and they'll still be vegan. But so there's Haribo Rainbow Strips, which is the ones that I'm currently addicted to, which is my easy order.
Yeah.
And they're fine. You know, they work
Yeah.
quite well, and they're vegan. Um, you know, the more expensive ones that are nicer, there's like Candy Kitten, stuff like that. They're all vegan, and you get the added benefit of them being sort of like palm oil free and stuff like that. So you're doing
Nice.
that extra bit as well,
Nice.
you know, for the environment and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So you can feel even better about yourself. Um, so, but yeah, you know, some Haribos are vegan. If they're squidgy and stuff like that, their chance are they'll have gelatin. So you got to
Yeah.
be a bit careful. But you know, if you there's a lot of websites like Plant Based News is a good one.
Hmm.
You can normally search up, you know, is this bag of sweets vegan, and it will normally give you a good answer.
Okay, cool.
But when in doubt, yeah, the ingredients list on the back is
Yeah.
the place to be. I spend most of my time doing shops checking if they, you know, if a product that has no need for milk has added milk powder in, because that's, you know, the biggest one for me is I don't want, you know, I haven't had milk for 5 and a bit years, except for the one time where my friend got lactose free confused with vegan and gave me some what he told me was vegan cheese and was actually just lactose free cheese, which was a fairly unfortunate event, but you know, is what it is. You can't blame them. But yeah, you know, so Haribo rainbow strips are my current thing. You just got to keep looking. Some
Yeah.
Sour Patch Kids can be vegan as well and stuff like that. But you know, generally, if they haven't got like a squidgy texture, they'll
Yeah.
be vegan because they won't have the gelatin in.
Okay, that's interesting to know. Um, and the next question was regarding protein sources, because I think this is one of the big pushbacks that people give to the vegan diet is, well, where are you going to get your protein from? But it's actually, I wouldn't say there's more, you know, there's definitely not more sources of protein than you get from sort of an omnivorous diet. But if you can just go through some of like your go-to protein sources, sort of to help, you know, sort of inspire people, share sort of good ideas. Because I remember when I mean, back in like 2017, I decided that I was gonna sort of stop sort of buying meat for myself. I think is the way that I look at it, you know? Um, if somebody like buys something, if somebody serves something up to me, like to me, if they have me around for dinner or something, you know, like I don't want to make it a case of, oh no, you got to change the menu and this to sort of to accommodate me. I'm sort of relatively flexible with it, but I was chatting to my housemate who I was living with at the time, and she said, "Oh, I tried to go vegetarian." She said, "But all that I did, the mistake that I made, was that I made the same meals that I did before, just without the meat."
Yeah.
Or that, and that's where people sort of go wrong because they don't actually under as athletes. Of course, we look at it through a slightly different lens, but lots of people, you know, you can't simply get through on a vegan diet just by eating fruit and veg, and like you say, like the odd can of like kidney beans. You know, so what are your recommendations for protein?
Yeah, so that's that, as you say, it's the biggest kickback, you know, is I think, you know, if I had a penny for every time I said I'm a vegan and then someone said, oh, but what about protein? I'd be a billionaire. You know, it's everywhere, you know, I'm always happy to have the open forum. So, you know,
Mm,
yeah, you know, but for me, yeah, there's a list of protein sources that I will always have in my fridge. Um, it's tofu
yep.
is an excellent example.
Hmm.
Tofu, tempeh, and seitan are the three really, really good examples.
Mm.
And in fact, seitan's the best. It's a super
Seitan
lean,
is my favorite.
yeah, it's super lean form of protein. It's quite low carb. So it's really good. Until recently, it's not been on something you can buy in like Tesco for ages and stuff like
Mm.
that. You haven't been able to buy it. So you have to make it until recently. But now they sell it in Tesco next to the tofu. It's in the little blue boxes, and they're brilliant. So absolutely, I think seitan is one of my
Have you got
favorites.
the Temple of Satan stuff? Is that
Yeah, the
yeah?
Temple of Satan stuff. In fact, they have a restaurant in London,
I
and
do know.
if you ever get a chance to go there, it's really nice. It's actually really
Interesting.
good food. It's like KFC, but you know, vegan. It's
Whereabouts in
pretty nice
London?
stuff. Camden.
Okay,
Yeah,
I should have known.
it's really nice. But yeah, so seitan, tofu, and tempeh are really good
Mm,
options. I think the big one for tofu that people there's two really big ones that people kind of get scared about with tofu.
mm.
I think the one is that it's quite flavorless. So
Yes.
you have to
Yeah.
season it, you have to marinate it. I actually joke around that I wish I'd gone vegan and then gone back sometimes because I think my cooking would be so much better after cooking with tofu because I now know how to flavor my food, and I
Yes.
think it makes a big difference.
Yes,
And
it
the
does.
other big fear I think I hear people have with tofu is that it's got super high levels of estrogen and things like that, which is, I don't want to go too far into it, but effectively there's quite a lot of studies and things like that basically say you don't need to be too scared
Mm,
of it,
yeah.
and that it's a different type of estrogen, it's a different hormone, and I think, yes, I think they're the two biggest fears. And tofu you can flavor quite well, even just salt and pepper, a bit of soy sauce, marinade, brilliant.
Oh, like
And the other one,
marinated tofu is such an upgrade.
oh yeah,
And it
I
doesn't.
I used to get mason jars and fill it with different sauces, and then leave the
Nice.
tofu in them, and yeah, it was brilliant. And then the other one I have that I mentioned was tempeh, which
Mm,
I think has a different. It's got a slightly different flavor to it. It's slightly lower in protein. It's still quite a high protein source, but the benefit of tempeh is it's a ferment, so it's got
mm.
it improves your gut biome as well as being high in protein, so it's a really good solution. And the other one that you can get that you can get in certain shops is TVP, textured vegetable protein.
Okay.
It's quite not the easiest to find, and when you
Mm,
can find it, sometimes a bit more expensive, which is why I'm sort of leaving it to the end. Um, but like Holland and Barrett will sell it. Most health food shops will sell it, stuff like that. And actually, that's quite good if you put it in your porridge and stuff like that with your
mm.
oats. It can be quite nice. And then the final one that I think it's kind of slept on a little bit, and not many people go. People have it not realizing it, but actually, the protein, the meat alternatives that you can buy at Tesco or Aldi and stuff like that are really good, and some of them are pretty good price. Like the Aldi, the frozen section in Aldi have some really high protein sources,
Mm.
and also quite like cheap,
Yes.
and they're really easy in a bind. So I think if you're buying the right meat alternatives, you can get really good protein out of them as
Yeah.
well. Obviously, they're a bit more expensive again, so and I think that's where a lot of people who go vegan get the thought that vegan diets are super more expensive because they'll have just the meat alternatives and things like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they are getting cheaper. But if you get the tofu, the tempeh, the seitan, you can normally get a bit cheaper from there, and get a bit more bang for your buck in terms of protein and to cost. Uh,
Something I think worth mentioning is that, these sources that you're talking about, even if somebody's listening to this who just eats an omnivorous diet, like get involved. If
yeah,
you eat, like chuck it in a stir fry,
absolutely.
or like try things that are a bit different because you might actually end up being pleasantly surprised. Like if you actually have, I know a lot of people, like you say, they get like weird about tofu and that. If you season it, if you like actually like learn how to work with it, then that is sort of that's the best way to go about it. But I think one of the mistakes that people make when it comes to with sort of the vegan diet in general is people think that automatically by removing meat and dairy from your diet, it will make it healthier.
Yeah,
It is it's very easy to eat an unhealthy vegan diet. In fact, it's a lot easier to eat an unhealthy vegan diet than it is to eat an unhealthy kind of omnivorous diet. If you don't
absolutely.
actually know, do your research and understand,
Yeah,
like what it is that you're after. Because if somebody does, because I know you're talking about sort of the meat replacements they have in Aldi. Again, they're fine to have like sometimes, but if you just live off of like vegan sausages and mash,
it's just the
then
same as if you live off normal sausages and mash, right?
yes,
It's
it is,
not the
and it's
best solution,
it's all quite
Yeah,
processed. Which
yeah,
again, just because something's processed doesn't immediately make it bad for you. But you like the vegan diet is done best when you are, well, I mean, like with any diet, really, when you are using fresher ingredients.
Absolutely.
Um, and I think that veganism lends itself really well to batch cooking.
Yeah, I think the big one as well, just going back, just rolling
Mm.
back a little bit about, it's really easy to be a bad vegan, almost an unhealthy vegan. It's
Yeah,
absolutely true because half your diet is vegetables, which everyone's
yeah.
told, that's what all you got to eat. You really got to eat your vegetables, and it is super important. Um, but yeah, I think as you say, it's easier to sort of not have that you know bad meat diet because you're eating you get your protein in and stuff like that. So at
Mm.
least you've got the energy. And I feel a lot of people who go vegan all of a sudden like, oh, I don't need to eat the chicken and stuff. So as you say, just have rice and some carrots. It's just that is then unsustainable for sure.
And then, people, they'll do that or they'll have friends that'll do that and they'll fall off the wagon after a fortnight because,
Yeah.
surprise, surprise, their energy levels are through the floor. Their health actually starts to go through the floor as well
Yeah.
because sorry, it's my dog. It's when I'm recording solo episodes, it's quite easy to manage her. But we know when we're recording a live, it's getting towards dinner time, isn't it?
He wants his food.
Um, it is. I forgot what I was talking about there. Vegan diet. People making us. Yeah. If they know that they have a friend who had a poor experience, they'll then use that as confirmation bias and tell
Yeah.
everyone about how unhealthy it is. And and you completed an Ironman like on the diet.
Yeah.
It's not just for. It's not just for. I don't know what the right word is to use. Lovies? I don't know. That feels like the wrong word to use. But
I get what you mean though.
it's not just a performative thing for people
Yeah.
in East London. It
Well,
is.
one of the big things I really hate to use it, but sometimes it just needs to be used is when people inform me that, oh, it can't be that healthier diet, things like that.
Mm.
And I try to never maintain the stereotype of an obnoxious vegan, but when people have told me enough times, I've gone, well, actually, if you look at this, if you can get your protein for your tofu, your tempeh, your seitan, and
Yeah.
actually it is a cleaner form of diet. And okay, I take a supplement for B12, but really actually if you look at a lot of analysis, most people should be taking B12 supplements, meat eater or
Really?
not,
Okay.
because lots of people just don't get it because you have to have red meat normally to get the B12 and things like that to get the highest amount.
Mm.
And I take creatine and things like that. All these things, yeah, okay, I take supplements, but a lot of these supplements are what actually the general population should also maybe be taking because
Hmm.
they have these deficiencies. To be at
Mm.
full power, it's maybe an idea. And actually, I'm really forgetful, so I probably have my B12 supplement once a month or something. I'm terrible for it,
Wow.
I'm really bad for it. But I think the big one is yeah, I can. I never like to do it, but sometimes turning around and say, well, actually, let's just do a show of hands. Who's done an Ironman and now tell me that I'm unhealthy? Because I hate to use it because it is it's a bit obnoxious, a bit
Insufferable would be the word that I
yeah,
would
exactly. Insufferable is the exact word. Um, but sometimes, if someone else is using their anecdotal
Mm.
sort of debate,
Yeah.
to beat you, sometimes I've got to turn around and give my own anecdote to sort of just balance the odds a little bit because I think the second you tell someone you're a vegan, it's they're almost out to tell you that you're not as healthy.
It's like a red flag
Yeah,
to a bull, isn't it? Some people will just go, "Oh, fair enough." Some people
yeah,
might ask questions, but the majority of people, they're gonna not be combative, but they'll have an opinion they want to share with you.
yeah, and to be, I find it really interesting. And I had a friend at work who was on the carnivore diet,
Mm.
and he did pretty well with it. And it was one of those really interesting ones. But the problem he had was the second you introduce sugar into your diet again, your body just can't handle it because you're in ketosis
Uh-huh.
throughout the entire time. So one of the big issues that you get is you know when you're on these really restrictive diets
Mm.
that like keto and stuff like that, as soon as you add stuff in again, because you're not going to live off these really restrictive diets forever,
Yeah, that's what I try to
your
tell
body
people. Yeah.
can't handle it. Whereas, I do think that, and it's the same with veganism. If I went out tomorrow, went to Nando's and had a full chicken like I used to, or decided to have some milk in my coffee or something like that, my body wouldn't be able to handle it. But I think the difference is the diet alone isn't so restrictive, it's unsustainable. Where I think a lot of diets that are used to lose weight or seen as health diets like keto and stuff like that, they're sustainable to an end, and then they're unsustainable after. And then when you start introducing things back, you just don't feel right. And I think it'd be the same for my vegan diet, but I think it's a more sustainable. To be honest, it's more it's not to go crazy, but it's more sustainable as a person, but also environmentally and socially, it's a more sustainable diet. But I do think that if I can just if I maintain it, I'm fine, kind of thing. So it's okay.
Yeah, like you say, like people can start the carnivore diet, the keto diet, and there are all these other kind of Atkins diet, whatever kind of fad diets, but you can't live on that.
Yeah,
You can, okay, you could lose some weight on that, perhaps. If like, but the main reason people will lose weight on these things is because they're simply eating less calories.
because it's restrictive. It's super restrictive.
Yeah, like
I,
oh,
I,
I've lost loads of weight since I started keto. It's like yeah, but did you eat like an entire family-sized bag of Doritos every evening before? Oh, since I
yeah,
cut out the carbs, I've lost loads of weight.
yeah.
Huh,
And the problem
I
is you then go
wonder
back
what
to it.
happened.
Yeah, it's like this is the problem is you go back to it, and I think it's a big thing. There's a lot of stuff out there that people who do lose weight through really restrictive measures do sometimes do lots of time put it back on, because
Yes, yeah,
you restrict yourself and then you're like, okay, party time, I've hit my target. Whereas as a more I think because as I say, when I was in uni, I put on loads of weight, and the reason why one of the reasons why I went vegan was to try and shed a bit of it as well,
yeah.
was that it was a really slow approach, and that slow approach allowed for a better body recomp.
Yes, that is, and and being like vegan for the most part, it is the kind of thing that can be sustainable. Like you don't find yourself like hankering or dying for something. I think most people who like start the keto diet or something, they will find themselves craving some kind of carbohydrate after a few
Yeah,
weeks. They'll have this sort of period of euphoria of wow, this is such a better way to live. I can eat all of the kind of the fatty protein that I sort of wanted to eat beforehand. But your body will start craving that, and it's difficult to be able to ignore the call of that long term. But yeah, like so many people who I chat to who veggie, vegan, pescatarian, they don't look back and go, "Oh, I really miss meat. Like I crave it so much." A lot of people they kind of well, sometimes I might catch a smell of roast chicken and think, "Oh, yes, I remember how that that used to,
that's that's kind of where I was going with this. Is I think that's how I feel as well. Is my partner for the most part will eat my food, and she'll have cheese, and then when we're at restaurants she'll have some meat maybe sometimes.
Mm,
But and just every now and again, looking at some cheeses. I used to love cheese. Looking at like some camembert or brie or something like
yeah,
that. Oh, it would be really nice. Or if we've gone out for a night out and we're
mm,
going back with some kebab and chips. Kebab, just really hits the spot, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't say that I'm I sit there and go, oh, what a nice plate of chicken right now would
Mm.
do me well. But when I see it, I go, oh, I do miss that. I used to love like hot wings. It used to be one of my favorite things. And I do sort of go, oh well, I would have liked to maybe have one last hot wing, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And which I think but I think one of the big things is a lot of what a lot of the comments that I get quite a lot again, towards my vegans. Why do you make why do you make vegan chicken, or why do you make
Mm.
like vegan pulled pork and things like that? I think this is the exact reason, is because, for me, I went plant-based because not because of the foods. I really like the taste of the food,
Hmm.
just for my own personal reasons, and,
Mm.
I think I wouldn't have switched if at first going, oh, instead of that vegan pulled pork, it's actually going to be called barbecue jackfruit, I probably wouldn't have liked it as much. Now I know what it is, fine. And I think actually it's a really good benefit for people who are vegan and not vegan to look at a menu and go, oh, plant-based chicken burger, or plant-based pulled pork or something like that.
Yeah.
I think you're more likely to go on a punt to try something if you kind of know going into it kind of roughly what it's going to be.
Yeah.
I brought a load of my friends to a vegan market. None of them are vegan. And they all bought hot dogs, and they could not believe. At first, they were like, "These aren't vegan hot dogs." They were like, they were just not accepting. I was like, "It's a vegan market. They're vegan hot dogs." And after a while, they were like, "Yeah, okay, you can taste. You can taste the difference. It's not going to be like for like, but there's going to be similar flavor notes." And I think that's really handy, because going into it, if you are wanting to try it, it's easier to know what you're going to try. It's not going to be some. If I served someone barbecue jackfruit, they're probably going to be like, "What is this going to taste like? What is it? What's the texture? What is it going to feel like?" Because it's not just flavor; it's texture and feel as well. That a lot of food comes into.
I think that first bite, like if you try a vegan or vegan alternative, that first bite, it's a wow. Like, how is this vegan?
Yeah.
The more you eat of it, the more you start to notice the differences.
Yeah.
Like the first bite of that burger, you think, wow, this is amazing. And then by the end, you're not going, oh, this is disgusting at all. But it's like, okay, yes, I'm getting different kind of tastes and sensations and that too. If it were like a normal burger, it's not the end of the world. It's not bad. It's just different.
That's exactly it. I think you're never going to get something like for like, but that's not what people match for match. That's what people want. They want, it's a similarity to allow you to get into, going into this diet and things like that.
Yeah.
It's almost like a taster session for, for some sort of sport or something like that. It just, it lets you dip your toe in without the previous stress, I think.
Yeah. And I just wanted to pick up on when you mentioned about B12.
Yeah.
Now, for those who aren't aware, that is a crucial B vitamin, and one of the vitamins that has, the highest rates of deficiency in the Western world from people, who aren't getting enough of it. And if you don't have B12 as a vegan, you are going to end up in hospital. It's not a case of well, you can see if you can wean yourself off of it. Like, it's vital for so many processes in the body. Like, you need to have that. And Sam, I want you to set a reminder weekly on your phone, okay, to take that B12 sup.
I will build up on that. I think the important one is B12 as a vitamin for everyone is important.
Yes.
And I've got quite a few friends who recently, and people I know who have now had to get the injections to re-engage their B12, because and then some of them meat eaters, some of the pescatarian, some are vegetarian. But one thing that is uniform across all of them is they say, "Oh my God, the energy that you get from it it's a boost." And the one thing I will say is the reason why over my however many years I've been vegan and probably haven't been very good with my B12 as a supplement is because if you get lots of plant-based milks, just to sort of make it a bit more enabling, a lot of plant-based milks and things like that, and a lot of sort of meat replacements you buy in shops, a lot of the time they'll be fortified is what they call it. And so nutritional yeast is a big one as well. I should have added that into my list of things to buy. If you tempted to go vegan, nutritional yeast is absolute superstar. It's like just gives you that oomph of protein, and it gives you loads of vitamins inside of it. For example, your plant-based milk, your Alpro or something like that, even your Tesco own oat milk or soy milk has, it's got calcium, it's got B12, it's got all your Bs, vitamin Bs and stuff like that. So as much as I agree, I'm pretty bad with taking my multivitamin in the morning. It's one thing that, it is maintainable as long as you get it from somewhere. And that's the key, right? With people who eat meat, you can get it from your red meats. The actual other one, which sounds really horrible, but the one thing I always questioned was, well, how does the red meat have the B12 in it? And it's because they eat dirt in the ground. I'm not telling you to go eat dirt, but actually carrots with the skin on and potatoes and veg with skin on that's in the ground can actually contain small amounts of B12 as well.
Oh,
Not
really?
saying to go, yeah, it's quite an interesting one. But yeah,
Okay.
I think, just make sure you're getting it from somewhere.
Yeah.
Sort of want to build on sort of your part of that because, otherwise it is a problem. I also take an omega-3 oil for my brain, which you can get from seaweed, but seaweed is expensive.
Yeah.
So omega-3
So
oil is cheaper.
I've just pulled up here a list of symptoms of B12 deficiency on the NHS website for anyone who might be interested. So we've got rapid breathing or shortness of breath. I mean, that could just be me in a VO2 max session, to be honest. We've got headaches, indigestion, loss of appetite, palpitations, problems with your vision. Feeling weak or tired. Again, that big one as athletes, we can kind of expect a level of fatigue, and that may be sort of improved. Diarrhea, a sore or red tongue, sometimes with mouth ulcers, and problems with memory, understanding, and judgment, cognitive change. So that's quite a wide-ranging series of symptoms. So yeah, I do recommend, if this is just try a B12 supplement. They're not horrifically expensive, and see if people notice a difference.
Absolutely. I think, there was, probably some stupid stuff, but, I think Instagram as a point of knowledge is not the best. But, there was quite a few people who do say, sometimes your supplements from different things, even if you're a meat eater or anything, can help. It's like creatine, right? But as a meat eater, you'll get creatine anyway from lots of
Yeah.
meat. But
Yeah.
you still have people who have their chicken and rice and stuff still having their creatine. And it's, the way I look at the same sort of thing with B12 or anything like that, it's just there to, supplement your diet, right?
Yes,
It's
it should
there
be a
to
supplement.
improve.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's a bit different with a vegan diet because B12 is incredibly hard to come by in a plant-based diet.
absolutely.
But yeah, broadly speaking, any kind of protein. Actually, touch on protein supplements for me. Is that something that you use?
Yeah, we'll go on to that. That's actually really good. I was going to go on to sort of that sort of stuff anyway, but yeah. So you can get lots of plant-based protein powders and stuff like that as protein drinks. I used to, and actually, before I went vegan, I still had plant-based protein powders because I preferred them.
Yeah.
I don't have protein drinks as much anymore because I'm quite small. My
Mm.
maintenance is a lot lower than other people.
Yeah.
So having quite a high calorie drink that's not very filling doesn't work for me.
Hmm.
But if you're sort of trying to bulk or anything like that, it's plant-based protein on the powders are really useful, and there's some really good ones out there. Honestly, it's just figure out what you like, right? And even if so even at that point, if you're allergic to milk or anything like that, it's a good option to switch out. The other one as well that I think is really useful in a bind is Huel, or any of the. I think Huel is the main one. I've never had any others, but I have Huel quite regularly. And just being able to mix that if you've forgotten to cook your breakfast, your lunch, or your dinner, it's super good in a bind because that's meant to be, and that is marketed and designed as a meal replacement rather than like protein drinks which are not a meal replacement.
No, they're
Huel
not.
has Huel has your carbs, your nutrients. You actually has your B12s, your omega-3s, everything you need really. Obviously, don't go living off that. I'm pretty sure they did some research of someone drinking for a year and he seemed okay. I think mentally he must have got insane, but I think in a bind, Huel is
Yeah.
super useful. Personally, actually, my issue with Huel is it's got too high a protein, but it's all
Really?
Huel is plant based as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, super useful in a bind. But I think Huel in itself actually has too high a protein. So I couldn't live off 3 of them because I think I get like if I had 3 of them, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 1,200 calories, I'd have 120 grams of protein or something. It's a crazy amount of protein.
Can you imagine the protein farts?
Pardon?
Can you imagine the protein farts?
Oh, it would have been horrendous. Yeah, that mixed with the creatine, it would have been really, really damaging for my body. For my
Well, and
nose
those around
anyway.
you.
Yeah. For my nose as well. Yeah. But yeah, I think they're the real good ones. I don't, as I say, personally, I don't have protein shakes. But when I did, the plant-based ones, I always enjoyed. Sometimes I'll put protein powder in my porridge or something like that if I want the extra
Yep.
kick. Similar to, as I mentioned, putting TVP in my porridge. But there's actually lots of Instagram sort of people out there who do sort of recipes and things like that. And as much as I think most advice from influencers can sometimes be taken with a grain of salt, sometimes
Grain of salt, a kilo of salt, I think.
yeah,
is a better way
well,
to
yeah,
start.
maybe. I think their food that they cook can sometimes look really good, and I make them. A lot of my menus, a lot of things I cook, either come from cookbooks. First came from cookbooks or Instagram. Nowadays, I experiment a bit more, and most of the time it's terrible. But I get to do the experimentation.
We live and we learn. Right.
Exactly.
So, if you can we can just wrap it up. I mean, is there anything else you wanted to cover with regards to the vegan diet?
No, I think the main one is give it a go. If you're on the edge and you want to try it, try it for a month. There's no harm, right? I think the best time actually to do it is in January, because veganuary. I always try to get my friends to take part in it, and never seems to land. But the thing about if you do it in January is you've got all your companies out there, your McDonald's, your Burger Kings, Wagamama, stuff like that. Well, Wagamama's got a bit worse, but they normally will put trial vegan foods at that time. And a lot of the time it's just falafel, but other times it's actually pretty nice. So I think the biggest advice I'd say is give it a go. Even if you do it for a month or whatever, you never know. You may like it. You may find it's better for you. Do a bit of research though. I think that's really important, because so many people just go in and all they'll eat is veg, right? Which I guess you would guess you need to do. Buy a cookbook or two. I think that really helps. But buy rather than a cookbook for tasty meals, do something like a more fitness based one, because you'll still get the taste in a fitness based one if you put enough soy sauce or whatever in, but you'll at least see the macros are hitting well. Maybe download My Fitness Pal for a month or two, just so you can make sure you're still hitting your goals. I think they're the big ones. ChatGPT actually, really does give some good ideas as well. If you can, if you ask it for, meal ideas, things like that. Yes, do your research for sure. Give it a go. Is the other one, I think.
I'd say that My Fitness Pal is worth downloading for anyone who's never used it before. Again, assuming somebody isn't at risk of an eating disorder or not recovering from an eating disorder or sort of anything like that. If you're an athlete who's looking to improve their nutrition a bit, it's just really helpful to be able to look, even if you're not looking at what I want to gain a calorie deficit. Even if you haven't got a clear goal, just to look at the breakdown of how many macronutrients you're getting in each day, where the calories are coming from, where the different macronutrients are coming from. Because it's actually really quite shocking in some cases.
It would be quite eye-opening for a lot of people who put it in and realize that they're not getting enough fiber and things like that. Because I think that's, just to build on the point, I think that's the big one that a lot in this day and age where there's a lot of weight on protein and people think I need to get my protein. Your fiber is almost as important, and lack of fiber is actually one of the biggest leading causes of, I think, bowel cancer in men. So I think that's actually and because of all this protein focus, actually there's trends showing that there's more cancer. People are being diagnosed with cancer more, and that may be from a diagnosis bias from more people getting checked up, but it could also the big worry is people just aren't having enough fiber because they're focusing so much on protein. and not getting the fiber. So
He-
even if
yeah.
you download MyFitnessPal just to look at your nutrients, I think it'd be a big eye opener.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, assuming that somebody isn't in a place where that could trigger any kind of unwanted sort of reaction to that with their diet. But again, it's just interesting, if nothing else.
Absolutely.
Well, we've broken the record for the longest podcast out in the last 18 months I've been running it. So you weren't lying earlier when you said you could talk the ear off with a
Yeah,
quick wall.
get me to shut up is the hard part.
And my dog's getting increasingly impatient. You probably see me on video trying to placate her. Um, so before we go, any pearls of wisdom you wanted to share? And if you can just give people an idea of what it is that we're working towards this year.
Yeah, so yeah, this year I'm really focusing at the moment, dialing in on Ironman Nice. That's kind of my big target. I'm not actually doing any events around that. Just really focusing on that. I want to absolutely smoke my time and get a far better time. The intention being that last year when I did 10B, as we've said before, I did it for the experience. This time I'm doing it to race. Well, not race, but I'm doing it to get round faster.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big one for me. I'm learning a lot, and I'm trying to hold myself accountable.
Yeah.
One of the big ones I'm actually doing, and you can edit this one out if you want, Simon, is I'm trying to post myself on Instagram a lot more. So I hold myself accountable through sort of training and things like that. So if you did want to have a look at that, I'll
No,
just find on the Instagram. Yeah. So
yeah, no.
Sam does
What's
more
your
things
tag?
Sam does more things on Instagram, and I'm gonna start, starting from about now, and start really pushing myself to sort of post a bit more, hold myself accountable on my training.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the big one. And see where I get to in Nice. Maybe I'll be doing something a bit more exciting in a couple of months after that. We'll see. And and also just every day trying to learn more things. As I say, I really enjoyed with my friends who aren't maybe vegan or haven't done an Ironman or haven't done different sports. I really enjoy the open forum. I get to have them. So
Yeah.
try and discuss different things, and maybe I'll learn something new as well.
Excellent. Well, Sam, thank you for your time. I'd like to think that everyone found something in there that will be useful to them in some way, shape, or form. So, do appreciate your time massively.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
That's all right. It's been a pleasure. So, I'm going to drop Sam's Instagram down in the show notes, as well as a few more other sort of links and resources on bits that we touched. Maybe some videos on the Ironman Wales course. I might stick
Yeah.
down there as well. If you've got good ones, send them over to me in WhatsApp, and I'll
Yeah.
add
I'll
them
send
to
them
the show
over.
notes. And yeah, so thank you once again. We might have you back on to chat about Nice if it all goes incredibly well,
Yeah. Another
which I'm sure
7 hours.
it will. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, mate.
Yeah. And you, buddy. Thank you.
Take it easy. Thank you once again to Sam for coming on and sharing his wisdom and his insights into everything 10B and the vegan diet. We are actually training together for another race, Ironman Nice, also very hilly, but a very different kind of hills. And the plan is to sort of do really well in Nice this year and then go back to 10B next year to set himself a nice personal best. If you're still listening, you must have enjoyed the podcast. So if you haven't already, please, it would help me out massively if you could head to where you get your podcast, leave me a nice 5-star rating, and if you have time, to leave me a little review, just sharing your experiences with the podcast and any feedback that you have. I would really appreciate that. And if you are interested in coaching, if you would like to go on a similar journey to Sam, my email is down in the show notes. Drop me a message and we'll sort out some time to have a little bit of a chat. Thank you once again for your time listening. I hope that it's perked up your turbo session or your long drive. And I look forward to seeing you all next Tuesday morning.